This is a 65.79 carat chunk of seam opal from the old Zorba field in Coober Pedy, South Australia. Now, I got this opal from my good friend Steve Newstrom of VillageSmithyOpals.com. But don't go there, or you'll see this. You see, Steve retired about a year ago or so, and although his opal business is now gone, his opal lives on. I mean, if you call this living. This is a dazzling stone. This area of bright yellow-green with blue is really spectacular. But our goal here is to take this chunk of opal and make it into a cabochon that retains a lot of this impressive color. Now you may ask, what is a cabochon? Well, a cabochon is a gemstone or other stone whose surface is smooth and usually dome-shaped, as opposed to a stone that is faceted, like a diamond. And when I say cutting an opal, I really don't mean that we actually cut it. Cutting is the term that we use for the whole process of grinding and polishing to make a finished stone. And okay, we do sometimes actually cut it with a trim saw in the process. Back to our stone. This is seam opal, which came from a narrow space where opal formed in between layers of sedimentary rock. And that's why it looks flat and is not very thick. This side of the stone looks really great, but what about the other sides? Well, there's not much color here, and there's a little bit over here, so we need to see how far the color extends and how close it gets to the edges, which is why we usually start by grinding the edges until the color shows up. But that's not what I'm going to do. I'm just too curious about how close the opal is to the surface, particularly on this side with almost no sand at all. Well, the color is right below the surface on this side, but it's all just light green. I think that there'll be higher density of color if I start from the side with all the sand. Now, let's grind the edges to see how far the color extends.
Fence. Oh my God.
I love horses, but I'm not an official horse person. And FYI, I don't look like a horse either. So he says. But I was assured that this horse is fine, likely has a bruise. And now I have an important opal lesson for you. When I was examining this opal, I noticed this wedge-shaped or V-shaped area. Areas like this on the edge of a stone virtually always is associated with an underlying crack. That's just the way it is. The crack may extend in one direction or in the other, but it's going to be there. I've dealt with this type of problem for years with flint because it flakes just like opal and it cracks just like opal. This is a slab of Arkansas novaculite, which is basically a type of flint or chert, and it behaves almost exactly like opal does. It has a wedge defect on the edge, as you can see. Let's test this wedge defect by tapping on it with one of my arrowhead making tools. There's the crack. Now, the crack does not necessarily extend the entire length of the stone, which is why you don't go tapping your opal when there's a wedge defect. You just work with it, and eventually you'll see the crack and hopefully be able to work around it. Okay, you guys are always encouraging me to use my torch, just like Justin does, but with the type of opal that I usually cut, I really seldom need it. But here it is anyway. Now, I love the pretty orange glow, but we could see the problem without the torch. Okay, where was I? So now I need to actually make a cabochon. I'll grind through this thick layer of sand and hopefully I'll eventually get down to the color. Okay, I definitely have most of the sand off, but with sand, most is not good enough. Sand has a nasty habit of diving deep into the opal, and if the sand is deep, it's a problem. I remember this 53-carat piece of meant-to-be opal that I had a number of years ago. There was very little sand on it to begin with, and it seemed to come off easily. Here, it's almost completely gone, but what is that smudge-like area there? Well, under magnification, it turned out to be remnants of sand, and because of it, I had to reconsider the shape of the stone. Well, maybe that was a good thing, but at the time, I wasn't so happy because even back then, bigger was better and better was good, if you know what I mean. So it's just about time I deal with that wedge defect. With most of the sand gone, we may be able to see if there is a crack that I was predicting. Okay, here's the wedge, and yes, there's the crack, just as I expected. But wait a minute, are we sure that's a crack? Let me bring out the torch to make 100% sure that it is a crack. Whew. Thank goodness. Well, the crack is situated in such a way that I should only lose a pretty small piece of the main stone if I cut along it, so let's do that. That's a pretty clean cut, very little loss. Plus, the smaller stone may be something that one of you might like to own, right? Well, I may cut it into a small cabochon or just leave it as is. I never know beforehand what I might do, so you'll just have to wait until the end of the video. Okay, now I have a rough cabochon. This has been a tough day for you guys, so while I finish cutting this stone, I suggest that you give your brain a rest and go watch some TikTok. I'll see you at the end of the video. Opal from Honduras is generally well known among opal lovers, but, well, how can I put this? It isn't well respected. Honduran opal is a type of matrix opal, which means that the opal deposits between grains of another rock, which we call the host rock. Now, the host rock for Honduran opal is black. It's basalt, a relatively fine-grained rock of volcanic origin. I'm sure you guys remember basalt, right? I mean, from my last video on leopard opal, the basalt in Honduran opal is more or less solid, with no holes or vesicles that we saw in leopard opal. So why is Honduran opal not well respected? It's because the color is present as tiny little dots, and nobody wants to have to strain their eyes to see something beautiful, right? Of course not. I mean, if you have to put your eyeball directly on opal to see it, you'll get brush burns or something. I was drawn to this particular specimen of Honduran opal because of the amount of color, much more than I'd seen in Honduran opal before. And in areas, there was evidence of digit patterns. Those are the finger-like patterns that I described in Australian opal, and this pattern is the way that nearly all natural opal on Earth forms. Because this opal is so beautiful, I'm going to make a cabochon out of it and prove to the world that Honduran opal is really worth its salt. How much is salt even worth? This is a really nice piece. Let's slice it, and then I'll use a template to make a perfect oval cabochon. And now for the final stones. At 2.60 carats, we have the offcut named Cut Off. I said that I would either make a small cabochon out of her or leave her untouched, but I lied. Actually, I started to do other things, and I guess I just wandered off. As PO'd as Cut Off is, she's hoping to find a family with a grinding machine. His expected to be the belle of the ball, but I don't believe she succeeded. She's round and jovial, but unhappy about being the worst feature stone on Pulitzer opal in years. But good news, I can't keep her around here because of the other opals. Bunch of snobs. So I'm hoping that one of you will play nice with her. And just when you thought things couldn't get any worse, out came Hondo. His mother looked like great stuff, but she did not reveal that she was full of hot air. When she dries out, her gnarly pock marks and scabs are revealed. I truly could not do anything to save Hondo, short of coating him with epoxy. And now the winners from last time. The winner of the 14-carat leopard opal chunk is Marv N. The winner of Albert, the 14-carat I'm as good as you deserve opal is Hey Lynn. The winner of Big Lou, The 28 carat really nice leopard opal cabochon is Charlie F. And the winner of Shard, the stocky but beautiful opal arrowhead, is Numbus. Well, that's it for this week's video. I worked hard, but I promise things will go better next time.